Hi, everybody. Welcome again to the Nine Candles. And the face next to me may not be as familiar as some of the other ones have. She's extremely familiar to me. This is my friend Chirlyn, and Chirlyn and I are old friends. I've known her, Casey's 45, 46 years.
Yep.
Because we met when my daughter was 6 months old in the suicide prevention office, which
Yep.
which is a story unto itself.
Yes, it is.
And I've invited her to be here to talk about finding out personal angels, and she's the best personal angel I could come up with for me. And I wanted to bring her on, and so we can look at that. And what we're going to do first, so as you know, if you've seen the candles before, we're going to go to the table and light the candles. And we're day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She's day 6. So the act of lighting the candles serves as a metaphorical beacon, guiding our spirits to the next level. And of existence by fostering deeper connections with the universe. The blue light special, which is the energy we're going through right now, it signifies a transformative experience. And there's the Chirlyn's candle, but my lighter went out. You think I'd get better at this? This is the nine candles, and you think I'd be better at lighting than it. We're signifying transformative experiences where our spirits become the catalyst for strengthening the universal connection. During this ritual, we can focus our intentions on personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, the aligning of our own energy, the natural rhythms of our planet. It's time for introspection, envisioning our desired future, to seek harmony with the world around us. It's a time to celebrate the growth and balance of the collective. By embracing this ritual, we're acknowledging the interconnectedness of all of life on Earth, channeling that awareness to elevate our spiritual journey. It's a beautiful way to celebrate and embrace the cyclical nature of existence while seeking personal and collective growth. And there's not a person who knows more about my personal and collective growth than Ms. Chirlyn.
And vice versa.
Yes. And I'm going to explain how we met at the suicide prevention office. We were not there seeking help. When I was in graduate school, one of the jobs that I created for myself so I could afford to stay in graduate school was I'd go into small nonprofits and I would straighten out their bookkeeping. Now, this was, mind you, before computers, before any of that wonderful stuff that was all created. This was before Lotus 1, 2, 3, for those who understand accounting. So I took over the desk for a woman who'd had to leave because of an illness, and she kept the entire records of this company in a little wallet checkbook, and she would write a check, and then she would write in the tiniest print possible. And Chirlyn saw this thing. This is true. She wrote in the tiniest print possible what she'd bought and what it was for, and then she would create this. Well, small nonprofits are like very close-knit families, and they get used to working with somebody, and everybody just loved this woman to death and thought she hung the moon. And I was there working the first month, and I realized they've spent a lot more money in the past on things than I would have thought they should have. So I went back and started doing a little forensic accounting, and I found out that this woman had found that her overtime pay came from ordering too much in the way of office supplies and then taking them back to the office supply place, and they would give her the cash. And so I had the rather difficult problem of explaining this to the director of the agency, who's a lovely, charming man, and exactly the kind of person you'd want running your suicide prevention program, but not from a business perspective. And when I took the job of straightening the books out, the idea was that this woman was going to come back. And when they found out how much she'd stolen from them, they decided it was probably not going to be an opportunity for her anymore. So I got to interview the person that was going to replace me because they still said I'd signed a contract that I couldn't stay and be the office behind this. And meanwhile, I went, it was in a little tiny 1920s wooden house, cold in the winter and too hot in the summer. And the front room, there were 4 or 5 people on phones talking to all the poor troubled souls of Dallas, Texas. So anyway, Chirlyn walked in, and my daughter was in the office with me that day in her little swing because she had a cold and she couldn't go to daycare. And the first thing Chirlyn said to me was, "I'll never have one of those." And I went, "Oh, I'm sorry." And she had been diagnosed with some medical complications that would have said that wasn't really high on the list of things that were going to happen. True.
Yep.
So, okay. So fast forward about 14 years. And she and I, we'd run into each other. We'd do things. I'd help her set up things. We'd do stuff together. We'd stay friends. We'd take each other in during ice storms on New Year's. I mean, just all that kind of stuff. And then we
Went to New York together.
Went to New York together. Yes.
Yep.
Rode in the taxi drive up. Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Oh, straight up Manhattan. And this guy didn't stop for stoplights. I mean, we went from Greenwich Village up to where our hotel was. And then he dropped us at the wrong hotel. And we said, "We're fine. We're getting out of this." Anyway, we have all those kinds of insane things happen. And then we didn't see each other for several years. And we met again in a deli where we used to go eat. And we both stood up, and I was pregnant at 42 and she was pregnant. And I said, "Well, things have changed." So, and the long and short of that story was we both were being treated at the same hospital. We both ended up with high risk pregnancies, and we ended up in the same room for over a month. And the nurses kept coming down the hall and saying, "We're going to split you two up if you can't behave." We never did behave. It was like being at summer camp, but pregnant. So, I mean, that's how crazy our lives have been. And she has a daughter who's a month older than my youngest.
Yep.
And anyway, but like I said, she just pops up in my life. She's one of the reasons I still read cards. Do you remember when you brought me those cards? It was when Carter was running against Reagan. That's how old we are, guys. And you showed up and you said, "I had a friend who has this deck. You know how to read these." And I don't remember telling you I knew how to read tarot. And so you went back down to the bookstore that was at the Lemon in Oak Lawn.
Was that a Rider-Waite deck? Because I had a Morgan Greer deck that
Yes.
I loved. Like I wore it out.
Yes. It was a Rider, but we started reading with a Rider-Waite deck that night. You went and got the little book that told you what all cards meant. And we sat up all night. And guys, we saw the whole Reagan administration and how he's going to destroy the middle class. And I don't care if you think he didn't. Trust me, he did.
Yes, he did.
And we saw that night. And then she and I just started reading together. And then I've never stopped reading from when you brought that deck in my life. Anyway, that's a whole lot about me. And they get to hear about me all the time. So what are you up to now, Miss Chirlyn? Where are you? You're not in Dallas anymore.
No, I'm the Denver friend that pops up in your shows occasionally. I live in Broomfield, which is a suburb of Denver. I am sort of retired, but I'm probably going to, I was a paralegal for over 40 years, worked in all kinds of law and law firms in Texas and in Colorado. But I have a jewelry resale business right now under Crones Mercantile, and I'm in PoshMark and Mercari and eBay. So if you guys are looking for anything in particular, I have some gorgeous stuff, but Nancy comes to visit occasionally and we go and
yes, she's the reason I started making crystal grids. I went to visit her to see Radley Valentine do something in Denver.
That was fun.
And we went into the store where he did his show, when he did his presentation of the Archangel Power Tarot cards. And she and I were looking at it and said, "These are really cool." And so the guy kind of explained to me how they worked. And then Chirlyn and I ran around Denver and went to all kinds of fun crystal places. Chirlyn that was in 2018. Now you're the first person who told me about the Ascension.
Yeah.
You started saying, "Oh, I'm going to all these lectures and they're talking about this." And I was half asleep because I'd gotten up at 4 a.m. to get to Denver. And I'm listening. We're getting on an elevator and we're going up to what floor? I don't understand. Little did I know.
Yep.
And then how many times did I call you after that people were showing up at my reading table wanting to talk about the Ascension? It was strange.
It was several times a week. Yeah. But then we talked that often anyway.
Yeah, we talk all that time, but I'd be sitting there. I'd never heard about the Ascension at all. I go see Chirlyn. I come back the very first week I'm reading. This one woman sits down. She goes, "What can you tell me about the Ascension?" And I'm like the worst person. This guy, I have no idea. And so I called Chirlyn and I said, "Another one of those Ascension people at my table." And she said, "You should be paying attention. Chirlyn is my angel conscience. She's my angel person that shows up and says, pay attention to this."
The reverse is also true. It was funny because during that time period, it was after who was elected, and I was devastated. Like I was angry and I was upset and I knew how bad it was going to be. And I thought after, I don't know, a year, maybe a year and a half, I started thinking, I can't live this way. So I decided that there had to be a different way to live, that I had to live with gratitude and to be kind when I could be, to be kind, to help me not I guess to live a more balanced life. I still thought he was awful, but I didn't have to live with that, like I was living with it. I really let it be a control in my life or something. But it was funny because I think it was 2018 when I had a reading with Linda G.
Yeah, it was right after.
Yeah, it's right after she started her channel, and I connected with her on such a fun level because we're like Virgo twins. Her birthday September 10th, mine is September the 18th, but really liked her and really caught on watching her channel. And I would tell Nancy, "You need to watch Linda G." And then I said, "Oh, you need to watch Intuitive View and some of the other people." And then boy, she took off and she started her own channel, and now it's like, you need to watch Nancy Jean.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
Yeah, she and that matter of fact, watching YouTube psychics started at your apartment because I hadn't watched much of that because
I think we watched Linda G.
We did. We were watching. It was during the Kavanaugh hearings.
Yeah. So it's been interesting to kind of watch over the last 5 years, 6 years really, but more, I think more intensely the last 5 years, how much spirituality has become kind of a way of life for a lot of people. They're not looking at, I don't want to start any controversy, but this evangelical, they're looking at more their real connection with the source, and realizing that there's a way of living your life that is more positive, and if you pay attention, you're given opportunities to be kind and to be somebody's angel. And you having said that, you've been my angel. I mean, I don't know how many times I've called you and said, "I don't know what to do. I've got this issue or that issue or whatever." So I was a single mom, raising my daughter, and they're just Nancy's son and my daughter are just from the first week in February 12th actually, to April 6th.
Yeah. No, he was born February 28th.
Why am I thinking he was born in April?
Because
he was due in April.
Yeah,
he was due in April. So they were just like 2 weeks apart, and we spent a month together in the hospital. It was the Kuwait war was going on.
Yeah, it had started.
And my doctor would come in and turn it off.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah. He said
I
you
don't
don't
want you
need to watch
watching
that.
this. He would
And,
leave and we'd turn it back on.
yeah, and for me, it was the first time since Vietnam that
Yeah.
I'd watched much war about anything
Yeah.
because of the thing. And oh, remember they used to bring in videos for us to see about how things would get handled and different procedures in the hospital, and they're like videotapes, and the little cleaning people would come, and they would clean our room up. Remember the little man? This little man came in, and we were watching Phil Donahue, and his show was on erectile dysfunction repair surgery or something.
You remember much better than I do.
And we were sitting there, and I mean, like, trust me, two women who are pregnant out here in high risk pregnancies, the last thing we care about is erectile dysfunction.
We
Like,
were kind of hoping for that.
yeah. And so we're sitting there, and this little man's kind of glancing up at the screen. And I've never seen a person clean our room so quickly. That little guy came scrambling out of the room, and we realized later he's probably figuring out why would the hospital put that up on the screen for these women. Our days were like that.
Oh, yes, they were.
Remember the pizza you got that was
Yeah.
stuck to the plate?
That was the day Sarah was born.
I know.
As they couldn't find anything I could eat, and they would ask me every day, "Can we get you anything?" And I'd say, "Can you go across the street to the Mexican restaurant and bring me some enchiladas?" Because I thought I could eat those. You know, their food was so bad. I was living on popsicles, remember?
But yeah, and
And so I,
the
it
little
was a
sandwiches,
pizza,
the
and
little.
I picked it up because
Mhm.
it was glued to the plate, and I was like, "We're going to hang this on the wall."
We did.
It
We
was,
hung it. Someone who'd been there before us realized how badly the hospital took all your money and didn't do
yeah,
much. They
yeah.
stole the clock that was supposed to be in our room. That part was gone. So we went and stuck the pizza plate up where the clock
Yeah,
was. So
it
much
was
for
actually, oh, go ahead.
no, so much for being bedded down and not walking around and doing stupid things.
Well, I know the night that Sarah was born, I was like, okay, because my doctor happened to be at a doctor's meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and they called him and said, "Yeah, we got a problem up here." And
Yeah, you
Nancy is the
passed out.
one,
You
yeah,
passed out.
yeah, I was not doing well. And Nancy is the one who called my family to come up,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and my family really loved Nancy. My mom and dad really did, you know.
Oh, they were great people. Her
Yeah.
father was in construction. He was a Baptist. Was he a lay preacher or was he?
He was a ordained
Yeah.
minister. Yeah.
And so, needless to say, I did not discuss religion with him because I'm an
Me
Episcopalian.
neither.
I know. And but he could build a house out of the back of his truck. And
Yeah.
at the time,
True story.
the company that I ran redid old houses, and we got a 1930s old house on Lover's Lane, and the couple wanted to completely turn it. And so your dad came up and he lived with you for about
Yep.
6 weeks
He
while
did.
we turned that house, because he could do all the crown molding, all the finished stuff. I
Yep.
mean, our lives are just so multi-layered, and we'd always show up at the time one or another of us needed it.
Yep.
And that's what angels in your lives are about.
Yes. True story. Yep.
Mhm. And my kids have grown up knowing Chirlyn, and
Yep.
they don't know. They could recognize who she is, but they could not recognize any of my siblings or anyone that I'm blood related to.
Yep.
And that's what angels do. Can we tell them the really creepy story about your Georgian background?
Sure.
Okay. You
I
want to
had past life
explain?
regression.
Yeah, you want to explain the past life regression, and then we'll talk about what you found out at the end.
Yeah. There's a lady here in Denver who does past life regression, and her office, she has one in Sweden. I think it's Sweden.
Yeah, I
Funny
think you
how I
told me it
met
was
her. I
Sweden.
was with Shelley when I met her.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, there was a guy there with a parrot on his shoulder. It was a whole strange thing. But anyway, she did past life regression on me. And it was funny because the oldest life I went back to that she regressed, so I have two others that were older than that, was in India. And I was an old man. But the one Nancy's talking about was during the Georgian era. And it was in the UK. And I was a young woman and I had been raised with a wealthy family, but I was like a lot of young women in that time period, I was an asset more than I was a loved child. I was someone to be bartered in a marriage or whatever. And I think I was about 18. I was bartered in marriage to an old man. He was in his 60s and he had an estate. I don't remember a lot of this, but I know that I wound up in this estate out of town and I was never allowed really to leave the estate. My best friend on the estate was my maid, who was Nancy. And I wound up pregnant and I died in childbirth.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
I was the last person in the room with her when
Yep.
she went across.
Yep.
And,
so you do definitely have soul families.
mm-hmm. And then she did the favor for me by getting hospitalized first. So when I went to the doctor and they said, you have to go in the hospital and you have to, you're going to be going in today. You're probably not leaving till the baby's born. And I said, oh, can I pick my room? And the doctor looked at me like I was half nuts. Well, she used to look at me like that all the time. But anyway, she said,
Yeah.
why? And I said, I have a friend that's up in a room and she said, that'd probably be really good for your spirits to be with your friend. So I went up to the room and I was going to see Chirlyn after my medical appointment. And I took her magazines. I said, here's stuff to read. And they came and they started making the bed next to her. And she goes, oh God, another one. And apparently you'd had a couple winter roommates. And
well, they were coming in and having their baby and leaving, and they were.
And you're sitting there here for a while. So finally, the nurse left. They were making the bed. I said, well, why don't you ask them who this person is? Maybe it's, you never know. And so they come back in and the nurse said, Chirlyn said, who's this one? And she said, well, we hear she's up on the floor. Her name's Lloyd, which is to be my last name, which I never talk about on the station anyway. And you looked at me and and it was your you bitch face. And you knew you're coming up here. And then the nurses really at one point, when we were about 3 days in, they came down the hall and they said if we didn't quit giggling and laughing and raising each other's blood pressure, they were going to take us apart. So I talked to my doctor, you talked to yours, and they never threatened us with that again.
No, it was funny because it was February, the end of January for me and end of February. And for Nancy, it was, I guess, the same end of January or the beginning of February. But it was for Texas. It was pretty cold. It was probably in the 30s, but we had our air conditioner on as low as it would go. You could literally see your breath.
We'd have people come in and they'd have their big woolly coats on and then they put their scarf over their head because it was that much colder than outside.
And we're just under a sheet. That was fun. It was fun. I'm so glad because I don't know if I would have survived if it hadn't been for you.
Well,
seriously.
No, I know I would when you left and had to go take Sarah home, just couldn't convince them to let you stay. I had to do 2 more weeks before I had the baby, and it was very lonely in that room. And
I understand.
Even with my teenage kids coming to visit me, my very embarrassed teenage son, who's now almost 50 and a dad, and well past
he is that.
Anyway, you're selling jewelry now, and and I guess I know everybody else has seen readers that they think have particular skills. You're one of the most incredible psychics, but you don't practice out in public.
I don't.
No.
I've thought about it, and I do think I would if there was the right circumstance. I would.
but, and she
I mean,
comes.
I do at home, and I
Mhm,
have very good contact with my guides, one of whom is an extraterrestrial, or was. He's in spirit now, but
mhm.
he's a
He's a tall one,
wonderful,
right?
yeah, he is a mantis,
Mhm,
looks like a mantis. And when I was at the Cliffs of Moher this past September, he told me we had met there many, many times, because a lot of times in my meditation, that's where we go. And I'd never
mhm,
physically been there before, but he told me we had been there many times.
mhm.
He's really I was going to say kind, but that the way of life for his people is very, eh, how do I say this? It's a consciousness like Gandhi had. You know,
Mhm.
it isn't a personal kindness, it's a way of life kindness
Right.
that he has and his people have. That's what he is from.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, he is. He's
He is very,
interesting.
yeah,
One of the things that I was explaining to Chirlyn is when I first talked to Dr. Galen, she did the introduction for the 9 blue candles. She feels it's the Lyran energy. That's where she's drawn to. And those are the lion people. And um, some people have told me their planet was destroyed by reptilians and that they're all over the universe or in various spots. But they don't hit our planet often, and they're really streaming down on us because they also have the same thing. They have
yeah,
the kindness, and they're there to support and to help and to be with you. And I guess that's what I'd like people to take away from the candles. I really mean it when in the meditation I talk about when we embrace the ritual, we're acknowledging the interconnectedness of it. And when I think of people I'm interconnected to, I've had friends since I was the age of 3, but the one who's been at the really critical crossroads in my life has been you. And
yeah,
that's just, I think it's important for us to acknowledge those people because too often, especially when you get to be my age, they slip away.
yeah,
And you don't want to go travel, you kind of get set in your ways. And um Cheryl and I are talking about she might come down for the solar eclipse, or I might go
yeah,
back up to Denver and see her up there. But it's these are the sorts of connections you're handed in this life, and they need to be nurtured. Like the power and
yeah.
the energy of these candles needs to be nurtured inside each one of us. So we're going to feel more and more of that part of ourselves opening up. So,
When you have people in your life like you are to me, I've got a few people, maybe 4 or 5
mm-hmm,
people that I can tell things that I normally probably wouldn't talk about when, like, working. We were talking earlier, I wouldn't go into a law firm and talk about my guide who is an ET, you know, one
mm-hmm,
of my teachers, um, because they most of them, although in Colorado you don't always have to watch what you say. One of the last attorneys I worked for owned a dispensary. That was one of his side hustles, but you learn to value those people.
mm-hmm,
And the older I get, the more I value
mm-hmm.
those people, like Nancy is to me.
Yeah. Well, we
And it is a relationship. Like, Nancy can say or be exactly who she is, and vice
mhm,
versa. There's no, I keep hitting that. I hope it's not making a noise.
mhm, yeah.
There's no uh, mask.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No. And we need that. Although I'm sure some of the people from some of the stories I've told them on my channel are like, is there something she won't say? There are. There,
There's always stuff we won't say.
but anyway, Sherilyn encompasses a lot of the power of life going on, the power of knowing you've been connected before. I mean, because when she walked in that office, I can't tell you, I've interviewed a lot of people to do a lot of things, especially a lot of volunteers and thousands of people I've interviewed and put in positions and said, this is what we're going to do. But I don't have many of them that are left, that are still part of my conscious world.
Yeah.
We learned what we needed to learn and we moved on.
Yeah.
And I hope maybe this will awaken for some people the idea of thinking through and reaching out, because this is the season where you can reach out to people. You know, I send them those horrible Christmas letters about how wonderful everyone in your family is when they're really selling dope in the alley. But, you know, that's a true story from my background too. It wasn't my family, but anyway, I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. We're going to go blow out the candles, because I have to do this every time so people won't burn up their houses like I almost did once. And with that, all of the smoke is our thoughts and intentions and prayers going up into heaven till the smoke finishes rising. And I will see you guys tomorrow for day 7. Yeah, 7. And I'm not going to announce who it's going to be because I've had to kind of shuffle some people around. But it's going to be either a card reader, a numerologist, or an astrologer, because that's the 3 that are left. And I can't thank you enough for coming on, Chirlyn. And
I love you, my friend.
I love you too. And I will put below her jewelry business if you want to give a girl a shot. And
yeah, I got some great stuff, I'm telling you.
She's taken this on as something she wanted to learn about and find, and done it in the last year or so. And it's really impressive what she does. And I want to thank everyone who came today. And let's see. Just see you tomorrow at 7. Talk to you then. Bye.